Hi again. We're continuing an article that we started from this journal. I got to write one of the articles in the Apologia Journal in between Y2K, 2019, the turn of the millennium, and the 9/11 disaster. We were very conscious of the fact there was just way too much prophetic speculation going on, and that was a bit of a surprise to us after leaving the Watchtower, that many of the evangelical world were just as excited about the future as Jehovah's Witnesses were. Yes, more biblical generally in their view of Armageddon and the last days, but way too much wrapped up with speculation about an early coming of Christ around the year 2000. And of course, 2001, what happened then did not help. But I didn't know that at the time when this was written. But we wanted to show from church history just how far speculation often can lead. And here's two brief overviews of the periods in the early church when prophetic speculation was rampant. And then what did prophetic speculation look like in the Middle Ages? There was little evidence of consuming prophetic interest in the generations immediately following the apostles. The writings of Clement of Rome, Ignatius, Polycarp, the shepherd of Hermas, and Barnabas, the so-called apostolic fathers, evince an inspiring hope in the sureness of the Lord's return, but do not bother with speculations as to detail or time. At the end of the 2nd century, Papias, a disciple of Polycarp, gives us some insight into the prevalent view of his time as to the second advent and the millennium, but makes no attempt at time speculation. During the same period, however, the Montanists of Asia Minor were bold to predict both the time and place of the Lord's return, their generation in Phrygia. We will see such convenient reinterpretation of clear scriptural statements again. The fall of Rome and the Western Empire during the 5th century generated much prophetic excitement. A chronological coincidence added fuel to the speculative blaze. The early church commonly used the Septuagint Greek translation of the Old Testament, and its Genesis chronology yields about 1,500 more years of Old Testament history than does the Hebrew text. Therefore, 6,000 years of history were due to end approximately 500 years after the birth of Christ. Lactantius, who lived from around 240 to around 320, one of the most honored rhetoricians and theologians of his age, and a tutor of Constantine's son Crispus, held to this chronology and believed the end was only about 200 years away. The world-changing events of the 5th century seem to confirm such speculations, which date back at least to the Epistle of Barnabas and the Jewish apocalypse called Secrets of Enoch. Ironically, Augustine, the greatest theologian of not only that century, but of the early church at least, had himself held to the 6,000-year chronology, only to abandon it for what we now call the amillennial view, which equates the 1,000 years of Revelation 20 with the spiritual reign of the saints in the present age. This viewpoint was later to justify the secular power of the Roman Catholic hierarchy. And now an overview of prophetic speculation in the Middle Ages. When the fall of the Western Empire failed to lead to the apocalypse, chronological calculations abated until the approach of the end of the first millennium AD. Although the amount of activity seems to have been exaggerated by the popular press and by bitter opposers of historic Christianity such as Voltaire, the Augustinian identification of the millennium with the church age seems to have generated a flurry of speculation around the year 1000 AD. That year passed without significant event, but another 2 centuries brought a more enduring prophetic school in the teaching of Joachim of Fiore, a Cistercian monk and bishop of Arezzo, who lived from around 1135 to 1202. Joachim's doctrine, which centered on the 3 ages, culminated in the age of the Spirit, to commence in 2 generations, that is, around the year 1260. I think we know where he got that number from. And this movement of Joachim gained the approval of 2 popes, although opposed by such influential theologians as Bonaventura and Thomas Aquinas. Although Joachim himself had been reticent about setting an actual date, his emphasis on the New Age's appearance in a mere 2 generations inevitably thrust his prophetic followers into a flurry or frenzy of speculative excitement. A direct result, apparently, was the excesses of the Flagellants, those penitents who sought repentance by self-scourging and severe asceticism. When that century's plague, war and famine, failed to hasten the second coming, some of Joachim's followers, rather than abandoning his chronology, simply moved the terminus from 1260 to 1290 AD, justifying their new calculation by dating it from Christ's death rather from his birth, as Joachim had. This characteristic response to prophetic failure will also be seen again. The Black Death, which decimated Europe's population in the next generation, only served to excite further excesses, both in conjecture and behavior. The Flagellants, in their zeal, not content to shed their own blood, now exercised their faith by massacring Jews all across Europe. Of course, this is the age of the Crusades as well. Much of this was nourished by prophetic speculation. Next time, prophetic speculation, the Reformation and beyond, things get really extreme during the early Reformation period. I'll put in a link to Samuel Prideaux Trégellis's refutation of the year-day theory. I did several videos based on one of his chapters from his exposition of Daniel. So I'll put the first of those on your screen. See you soon.